Hey guys! So I really wanted to read a story to you guys, and the story I really wanted to share with you guys, and I'll still do little picture books too. But today I'm gonna start reading to you The Wild Robot by Peter Brown. I checked out his publishing company, which is called Little Brown and Company, and they've said that we can read these books to you. And I know this is one that we talked about reading before spring break. That when we came back, we would start it. So we're gonna start it today, and each day I'll read about 5 or 6 chapters because these chapters are short, even though it's a long book. They are short. So I'm gonna start reading this to you. I just thought that this is a good time for us to start a new book and so that you guys can hear. So I will post daily videos of me reading this to you guys. So this is The Wild Robot. It is part of the Wild Robot series that Peter Brown has created. This is the first book. This is just an illustration of what's inside the book. Chapter 1: The Ocean. Our story begins on the ocean, with wind and rain and thunder and lightning and waves. A hurricane roared and raged through the night, and in the middle of the chaos, a cargo ship was sinking down, down, down to the ocean floor. The ship left hundreds of crates floating on the surface, but as the hurricane thrashed and swirled and knocked them around, the crates also began sinking into the depths. One after another, they were swallowed up by the waves until only 5 crates remained. By morning, the hurricane was gone. There were no clouds, no ships, no land in sight. There was only calm water and skies, and those 5 crates lazily bobbing along an ocean current. Days passed, and then a smudge of green appeared on the horizon. As crates drifted closer, the soft green shape slowly sharpened into the hard edges of a wild rocky island. The first crate rode to shore on a tumbling, rumbling wave and then crashed against the rocks with such force that the whole thing burst apart. Now, reader, what I haven't mentioned is that tightly packed inside each crate was a brand new robot. The cargo ship had been transporting hundreds of them before it was swept up in the storm. Now, only 5 robots were left. Actually, only 4 were left because when that first crate crashed against the rocks, the robot inside was shattered to pieces. The same thing happened to the next crate. It crashed against the rocks and the robot parts flew everywhere. Then it happened to the next crate and the next. Robot limbs and torsos were flung onto edges. A robot head splashed into a tide pool. A robot foot skirted into the waves. And then came the last crate. It followed the same path as the others, but instead of crashing against the rocks, it sloshed against the remains of the first 4 crates. Soon, more waves were heaving it up out of the water. It soared through the air, spinning and glistening until it slammed down onto a tall shelf of rock. The crate was cracked and crumpled, but the robot inside was safe. Chapter 2: The Otters. The island's northern shore had become something of a robot grave site. Scattered across the rocks were the broken bodies of 4 dead robots. They sparkled in the early morning light, and their sparkles caught the attention of some very curious creatures. Here's the otters. A gang of sea otters was romping through the shallows when One of them noticed the sparkling objects. The otters all froze. They raised their nose to the wind, but they smelled only the sea. So they cautiously crept over the rocks to take a closer look. The gang slowly approached the robot torso. The biggest otter stuck out his paw and swatted the heavy thing, and then quickly jumped back. But nothing happened. So they wiggled over to a robot hand. Another brave otter stuck out her paw and flipped the hand over. It made a lovely clinking sound on the rocks, and the otters squeaked with delight. They spread out and played with robot arms and legs and feet. More hands were flipped. One of the otters discovered a robot head in a tide pool, and they all dove in and took turns rolling it along the bottom. And then they spotted something else. Overlooking the grave sites was the one surviving crate. Its sides were scraped and dented, and a wide gash ran across its top. The otter scampered up the rocks and climbed onto the big box. 10 furry faces poked through the gash, eager to see what was inside. What they saw was another brand new robot. But this robot was different from the others. It was still in one piece, and it's surrounded by spongy packaging foam. The otters reached through the gash and tore at the foam. It was so soft and squishy. They squeaked as they snatched at the fluffy stuff. Shreds of it floated away on the sea breeze. And in all the excitement, one of their paws accidentally slapped an important little button on the back of the robot's head. Click! It took a while for the otters to realize that something was happening inside the crate, but a moment later they heard it, a low whirring sound. Everyone stopped and stared, and the robot opened her eyes. I wonder what they're going to think about it. Wonder if they're going to be scared or if, I don't know. Don't know what's going to happen. Chapter 3. The Robot. The robot's computer brain booted up. Her programs began coming online. And then, still packed in her crate, she automatically started to speak. Hello, I'm Razum, Unit 7134. But you may call me Roz. While my robotic systems are activating, I will tell you about myself. Once fully activated, I will be able to move and communicate and learn. Simply give me a task and I will complete it. Over time, I will find better ways of completing my tasks. I will become a better robot. When I am not needed, I will stay out of the way and keep myself in good working order. Thank you for your time. I am now fully activated. Chapter 4. The Robot Hatches. As you might know, robots don't really feel emotions, not the way animals do. And yet, as she sat in her crumpled crate, Roz felt something like curiosity. She was curious about the warm ball of light shining down from above. So her computer brain went to work and she identified the light. It was the sun. The robot felt her body absorbing the sun's energy. With each passing minute, she felt more awake. When her battery was good and full, Roz looked around and realized that she was packed inside a crate. She tried to move her arms, but they were restrained by cords, so she applied more force. The motors in her arms hummed a little louder, and the cords snapped. Then she lifted her hands and pulled apart the crate. Like a hatchling breaking from a shell, Roz climbed out into the world. There's a picture of Roz. Chapter 5. The Robot Gravesite. Those otters were now hiding behind a rock, their round heads nervously poked up, and they watched as a sparkling monster emerged from a crate. The monster slowly turned her head as she scanned the coastline. Her head turned and turned all the way around, and it didn't stop turning until she was looking right at the otters. "Hello, otters. My name is Roz." The robot's voice was simply too much for the skittish creatures. The biggest otter squeaked, and the whole gang suddenly took off. They galloped across the robot gravesite, flopped into the ocean, and raced through the waves just as fast as they could. Roz watched the otters go, but her eyes lingered on the sparkling objects that littered the shore. The objects looked strangely familiar. The robot swung her left leg forward, then her right, and just like that, she was taking her very first steps. She stomped away from her crate and over the rocks and through the gravesite until she was standing above a broken robot body. She leaned in and noticed the word "Rosum" lightly etched on the torso. She noticed the same word on all the torsos, including her own. Roz continued exploring the gravesite until a playful little ocean wave crashed over the rocks. She automatically stepped away from it. Then a bigger wave sloshed towards her, and she stepped away again. And then a gigantic wave crashed over the rocks and engulfed the entire gravesite. The heavy water pounded against her body and knocked her to the ground, and her damage sensors flared for the first time. A moment later, the wave was gone, and Roz lay there dripping and dented and surrounded by dead robots. Roz could feel her survival instincts, the part of her computer brain that made her want to avoid danger and take care of herself so she can continue functioning properly. Her instincts were urging her to move away from the ocean. She carefully got to her feet and saw that high above the shore, the land was bursting with trees and grasses and flowers. It looked lush and safe up there. It looked like a much better place for a robot. She had just one problem. To get up there, she would have to climb the sea cliffs. This is the last chapter I'm going to read to you today. Chapter 6. The Climb. So now Roz is out of her crate. She's turned on and functioning properly, and she's met these sea otters, and she's got introduced to the ocean, which hasn't been safe to her, so she's trying to find herself a safer place for her to be. Crack, thunk, clang. Roz was having a little trouble climbing the cliffs. She had a new dent on her rear and a long scrape down her side, and she was just about to get another ding when a crab scuttled out from underneath a piece of driftwood. The crab looked up immediately, showed off his giant claws. Everyone was afraid of his claws, but not the robot. She looked down and introduced herself. "Hello, crab. My name is Roz." That's pretty funny. After a brief standoff, the crab cautiously backed away, and then Roz noticed how easily he moved over the rocks. With his wide stance and his grippy feet, the crab could crawl up and down any rock face. So Roz decided to try out this climbing technique. She spread her arms wide and clamped each of her hands onto the cliffside. She jammed one foot into the crack and lifted her other foot onto a narrow ledge. And just like that, she was climbing. She's doing a lot better than Miss Tippet would, I can tell you that. Roz moved awkwardly at first. A chunk of rock crumbled in her hand, and she had trouble finding footholds. But as she climbed higher and higher, and she started to get the hang of it, Seagulls squawked from their cliff nest and swore when the robot came too close. But Roz paid them no mind. She was only focused on getting up to the top. Up and up and up she went, methodically climbing. Methodically means she was thinking about each step she took. Methodically climbing past nests and ledges and tiny trees rooted in the cracks, and before long the robot felt the soft soil of the island beneath her feet. So there's the crab over here, and there's Roz climbing up the rocks. That's the end of chapter 6. So I wonder, what's it gonna look like up there? What's Roz gonna do when she gets up there? Is she gonna meet other creatures? Is she gonna become more curious now that she's at a different surface? Stay tuned tomorrow, starting with chapter 7. Bye guys, hope you enjoyed this reading today.